We pass our reflections every day, within mirrors and in windows, harmless and familiar. Reflections of ordinary life, or so we tell ourselves. Imagine if what stared back was more than just a reflection. Not a trick of the light, not your imagination, but something patient, something waiting for permission, for the right moment, the right time, and the right person just dumb enough to release it. And all it took was a mirror, a smile, and a few words read aloud. Tonight, 5 friends are about to learn that some rituals are best left alone, and some games are not meant to be played. The city was restless, the rhythmic hum of cars passing over potholes, and the occasional distant wail of a siren were the only constants in the chaos. Above, the sky was impenetrable black, the stars hidden behind clouds and smog. Tucked away in a forgotten corner of the city, 5 teenagers gathered in an abandoned building, a warehouse, once a thriving factory, now lay decayed, its walls covered in graffiti and its windows completely shattered. The hollow structure loomed above them like a silent, watchful guardian. Inside, the air was heavy and damp, carrying the faint metallic tang of rust. They sat on a cold concrete floor in a loose circle. A collection of candles flickered weakly, their small flames fighting to stay alive against the oppressive dark. In the center of the circle, a mirror lay flat on the ground, its edges chipped and its surface cloudy with grime and condensation. At its center was a notebook, its leather cover worn and cracked, its pages stained with time and something darker.
Alright guys, tonight we're doing something special. Something unforgettable. I've got a new game for us called Smiling in the Dark.
Oh, great. Another one of Logan's genius ideas. What is it this time? Like Bloody Mary's awkward cousin?
No, Jake. It's Bloody Mary's cool cousin with a mirror fetish.
I'm already regretting this.
Don't be so dramatic, Ellie. You'll live. Probably.
Logan, what is it exactly? Smiling in the dark? The name alone sounds like a bad idea.
Logan held the notebook higher, as though it were a sacred relic. Its leather cover was cracked and faded, with faint markings scratched into it. Runes, or maybe just crude symbols. But whatever they were, they looked as though they were carved in haste or fear.
I found this thing in this old gypsy store downtown. The owner barely said a word to me, but the moment I picked this thing up and asked her what it was, she finally spoke.
And what did she say?
Well, she never looked at me, but with a stern voice, she said, "Do not open that book." So, obviously, I stole it.
You what?
Wait, you stole it?
You didn't stop to think that maybe that might have been a warning.
Oh my God, Logan.
Jesus, Logan. You don't steal stuff from creepy shops. That's like rule number 1 of not dying in a horror movie.
Relax. It's just a book. Besides, if it were cursed, we'd already be screwed. Plus, warnings are just invitations with bad marketing. Otherwise, we wouldn't be in this abandoned building. Now would we?
The tension hung in the air, heavy, uncomfortable. No one laughed, and everyone was beginning to feel uneasy.
So, what's in it?
It's full of rituals and symbols and stuff. But this one here, this game, or ritual in this case, is pretty easy. All we have to do is light some candles, sit around the mirror, and smile.
And summon what, exactly? A friendly ghost?
No, something better, and far more scarier. In the English text, it's called No Face, also known as the Mirrored One. Because according to this book, this thing doesn't have a face of his own, and it takes the faces of those who breach the rules of the ritual.
Logan's voice lingered in the air like a challenge. He dropped the notebook back onto the mirror with a soft thud, the sound reverberating unnaturally in a cavernous space.
Okay. And what happens when No Face shows up? We high-five it and call it a night?
If it shows up, it doesn't stay long. Not unless we screw up anyway.
I'm sorry, screw up? In what way?
Well, that's the catch. It's more like a game than a ritual. And it has rules. If you don't follow them exactly, then, well, it doesn't leave. It stays with you.
The room grew colder with Logan's words, and a faint chill crept into the air, curling around their ankles like smoke.
All right. Explain the rules. In detail.
Okay, so here's how it works. First, every person in the circle needs their own candle. They have to stay lit the entire time, no matter what. If one of them goes out, you've got a problem. Second, sit in a perfect circle around a mirror. Keep your knees touching the next person's, so the circle stays connected. The mirror must be positioned in the center of the circle, flat on the ground. No Face uses it to manifest and appear. So, the mirror is sort of like a gateway. Don't move it. Don't look away from it for too long either. And for God's sake, don't step on it.
All right. Fine. Candles, mirror, got it. What else?
Once we're all set, someone has to read the incantation from this book. Obviously, that'll be me. While I'm reading, everyone has to sit in silence and smile. Once I start reading the incantation, you keep smiling. Alright? No matter what happens, no matter what you may hear, see, or feel, you don't stop smiling. And whatever you do, keep your candles lit. Don't break the circle.
They all went silent. The flickering candlelight suddenly felt dimmer.
What happens if we mess up? Like, if we talk or stop smiling?
Well, unlike some of the others in this book, this thing actually likes it when you break the rules. If you stop smiling, it begins to smile. And that's when it moves closer. And if you break the circle, you've pretty much invited it in.
The group exchanged uneasy glances, their forced confidence wavering. In an attempt to lighten the mood, Jake cracked a joke about toothpaste mascots, but it was all in vain, because no one laughed. Ellie hugged her knees tighter, her phone gripped like a lifeline in her hand. Mia rolled her eyes, but even she looked unnerved. Emma sat silently, her eyes fixed on the mirror, as if she can already feel something stirring within it.
All right, guys, light your candles. It's time to meet No Face.
Logan sat at the head of the circle, the black notebook spread open on his lap, its pages brittle and crackling like the hushed whispers of forgotten voices. The mirror in the center of the circle reflected the weak, quivering light, its surface dull and cloudy. The group sat tightly together, their knees brushing against each other, and their breath visible in the frigid air.
All right, everyone smile. Big, dumb, happy grins.
Logan cleared his throat, his grin wider than the rest. However, even he couldn't mask the flicker of hesitation in his voice. The notebook felt heavy in his hands now, as though it was aware of what it contained. He read the incantation aloud, though nervously. The words he read spilled into the air, unnaturally and wrong, each syllable cutting through the silence like a blade. The candles flared briefly, their flames stretched upward before shrinking down again, and the temperature in the room dropped immensely, frost blooming along the edges of the mirror. For a moment, nothing happened. The group sat in tense silence, and minutes later, their forced smiles began to ache. Jake's jaw spasmed slightly, the muscles in his cheeks twitching under the strain. His smile held, but barely, like it had become something separate from his face. Mia sat perfectly still, almost too still. Her lips had gone pale. The forced grin had drained the color from them completely, leaving them dry and cracked at the edges. She pressed them tighter together, hiding the tremor beneath the stretch. Ellie's eyes darted toward Jake, seeing the strain and the pain on his face. Her expression pleaded with him to not speak, not to move, and to please not to mess this up. But her mouth remained frozen in a wide, trembling grin, the kind only fear could forge. Emma's fingers tapped nervously against her knee, in perfect rhythm with the candle flicker. One hand crept toward her phone, then stopped. Her grin never wavered. Logan twitched, not from the cold, but from restraint. The smile on his face grew wider and forced, as if what he'd read was echoing inside him. Ellie was struggling to maintain her composure. She blinked once, twice, then a single tear rolled down the side of her cheek, tracing the curve of her smile like it didn't belong there. No one said it, but they were all thinking it. That this was stupid, that their faces were in pain. This was torture. They'd gone too far now to stop. Somewhere beyond the circle, a sound began, faint and shaky, slithering through the air, thin and delicate, crying. Not loud and not exactly human. It was the sound of a woman crying, but not quite. Subtle sobs, muffled and choked, like they were crawling through a wall too thick for sorrow to pass through clean. There was emotion in it, but it was all wrong. The candidates didn't match grief. The breaths came too slow, too steady, as if practiced and rehearsed. And beneath each sob, there was a tremor, like a second voice beneath the first, whispering through her tears with something ancient, canine. A soft canine whimper, low and broken, familiar, pitiful and painful, all at once. It twisted the sorrow. Not only did it sound practiced, but predatory, as if the crying was not from someone who was suffering, but from something learning how to suffer. Like something pretending to feel pain, just to see how you'd react. Then it stopped. Around the circle, no one spoke. Their breathing quickened, shallow, fast, controlled only by force of will. Jake's chest rose and fell like he was running in place. Ellie's fingers twitched at her sides, fists clenched too tightly to be casual. Behind every grin was a panicked expression, sealed behind clenched teeth and false hope. Smiles became masks, shaking, cracking, barely holding it together. No one dared move. Then, laughter this time. Not loud, not crazed. A soft, distorted chuckle. Unmistakably female. Low and amused. As if whatever was watching had found the moment delightfully stupid. It rippled through the warehouse walls with the same trailing echo. Like the sound was being passed back and forth between layers of glass. It wasn't the laughter of something evil. It was the laughter of something entertained. A delicate chuckle that sounded pleased, as if it heard something funny and was still laughing at the punchline. It wasn't in the room, necessarily. It was around it, inside it. The group's expressions began to fracture. Mia shifted, shaking her head in disbelief. Her smile cracked and began to falter. Panic bloomed in her eyes. She moved, just slightly. A knee shifting, a hand bracing against the floor, preparing to stand. But she paused. Logan's hum cut through the fog, sharp, intentional, like the start of a gasp, but controlled, low and urgent, a strangled vibration of fear. Not a word, but a warning. He didn't move his mouth. He didn't blink. He just stared, wide-eyed, at Mia. His neck stiff, his breath shallow, his head barely turned toward her. But his eyes said everything. Don't. His grin stretched painfully. Fear radiated from behind it, real and pleading. Mia froze. She looked at the others, all trembling behind their grins. No one moved. No one spoke, all still seated and trying to hold their smile. And seconds later, Mia sat back down. The fog thickened, curling around the mirror's edges. For a moment, there was only mist and candlelight, wavering, weightless. Then something began to form. A face. Delicate, feminine, beautiful. Ethereal features slowly sculpted themselves from the haze. High cheekbones, closed lips, a gentle brow softened by something almost tender. Her eyes remained shut, as if in a deep sleep or meditation. There was no malice, no warning, no pain, only stillness, only breathing. With each inhale, the face grew slightly, not grotesquely, but naturally, as though the fog itself was drawing breath through her. Her cheeks lifted ever so slightly, her skin pulling outward like a veil caught in a tide. Then, as she exhaled, she shrank, subtle, fluid, like the fog was letting go of her form. There was no body, no neck, no hair, just a face, suspended in vapor, emerging more fully with every breath, then fading, as if the mirror had caught a soul mid-dream and refused to let it go. Ellie's body trembled. Her voice broke the silence. Not loud, but enough.
Is it awake? Or alive?
Being quick on his feet, Logan shushed her just in time before she could continue to say anything else. As Ellie's voice faded, the woman's lips shifted. A faint upward curve, a twitch of the corners. Almost nothing, but enough to disturb the air itself. Her eyelids fluttered, not open, but no longer still. It was a smile, barely, and it hadn't been there before. The face in the mirror didn't snarl. It didn't even speak. It only inhaled, slow and soundless. The mist curled around inward with it, the edges of her features drawing into sharper focus. Still beautiful, still at peace, but not dead. Ellie's hand shook. Her breath stuttered. One hand fumbled instinctively for her phone. Some desperate attempt to reach for something real. But it slipped from her grip. It fell and hit the concrete with a sharp thud, an echoing crack. The sound shattered the silence like a scream on the water, and the group jolted. The circle trembled. Their smiles wavered, then snapped back into place, forced and faltering, and held together by panic and pain.
Ellie, are you trying to get us killed?
Guys, stop.
Logan wasn't quick enough this time. The mirror pulsed. The face inhaled again, but this time, her smile grew. Only slightly, but now it was clear. Her mouth stretched just a bit wider. One eye twitched. A subtle curve at the outer corner, not by choice, but by response. The entity inhaled again, slow and serene, and her smile deepened, just a hair. Her lips pulled wider across her perfect face, too smooth to be natural, and one eyelid cracked further, but barely visible, revealing a sliver of black beneath the fogged eyelashes. No one noticed, but it noticed them. A small change began to take place. Her features stretched just a fraction too far. The beauty still remained, but it was rigid now, cold, controlled. The face beneath the fog no longer looked asleep. It looked interested.
Did her face just...
Around the circle, every grin had begun to falter, teeth clenched, lips trembling. The smiles were no longer masked with fear. They revealed it. Logan didn't move. He was staring, not at the others, but at the mirror. Fear had pinned him in place. He should have reminded them, warned them. But the sight of this thing had stolen his voice. She was still beautiful, but not in the way she was before. Now, she looked like something trying to be beautiful. Like the memory of a face stretched over something else.
She wasn't smiling before. And her eyes are they?
As her eyes opened a little wider, the features, once unmistakably female, twitched. A jawline shifting where it hadn't been, a shadow of something broader. For a split second, she almost looked like someone else entirely.
No, this isn't happening.
Another smile, wider this time. Her cheeks lifted, her lips parted just enough to show a sliver of teeth. Her eyelids twitched again, and this time, her left eye opened a fraction further, barely closed, as if waking. Suddenly, the flames in the countenance stretched, unnaturally tall. Then, they were snuffed out completely, and the room collapsed into chaos.
Turn on the lights. Someone turn on the fucking lights.
Scrambling bodies, skidding feet, choked breaths. Every voice blurred with the next. They couldn't see each other, couldn't track each other. All the while, from nowhere and everywhere, the laughter returned. Soft and feminine at first, but soon after turned into something deeper and heavier.
Logan, fix this. Do something.
A faint glow pulsed from the mirror. Not warm, not helpful. Just enough to reveal her face again. Now, hovering outside of the frame, she was no longer confined. The face floated just above the floor, still surrounded by fog, and the shape was still shifting. Her eyes were half open now, and the smile had grown much wider. The longer the rules were broken, the more the transformation continued. The face was no longer just watching. It was becoming something else. Her expression, once soft, delicate, almost mournful, held for a moment longer. Then it split. The transformation wasn't violent. It was deliberate. Her face, peeled itself apart from the inside out. The serene curves of her cheeks sharpened, stretched. The jawline cracked downward and widened. Her cheekbones carved into harsh angles. Smooth lips drew back, slowly, revealing teeth that didn't belong in any human mouth. Not sharp, not fanged, but wrong. Too perfect and too numerous. Like a mannequin carved with a smile by someone who had never seen a real one. One eye snapped open fully, slow, unblinking, and hungry. And the female face was gone. The eyes, they stayed wide, not glowing, not bleeding, just open, unnaturally wide. The whites were too white, the pupils too still, too focused, as if they weren't watching, but recording. The fog behind it throbbed with every breath it drew. Inhale, expand, exhale, stay. The transformation was complete. What replaced it was male, broad but boneless, strong but soft in the worst places, asymmetrical and distorted. The kind of face you would expect to see smeared in a dream, oppressed against the glass of a window you forgot to lock. The grin now stretched from cheekbone to cheekbone, impossibly wide. Lips pulled thin over gums that didn't end, like the skin had been cut just to make room. There was no humor in it, no emotion, just carnivorous delight. Not because it wanted to eat, but because it knew they would run. And that's exactly what they did. The entity didn't scream. They didn't even chase them. It stayed in place and inhaled, slow and steady, expressing that delighted smile of something that had waited a very long time to be seen, and not through a mirror, but by the eyes of others. The rain hit them like a wall, cold, endless, and alive. It soaked through their clothes in seconds as they slipped and stumbled over each other in a blind panic. But the face didn't follow. It simply watched, still floating just outside the broken circle, bathing in that unnatural glow, still breathing that slow and deliberate breath, still smiling. They didn't speak. The only sounds were wet footsteps slapping against pavement and their lungs dragging for air. Streetlights passed overhead like flickering warnings. The city around them should have felt familiar, alive and comforting. But something was wrong. There were no cars, no night joggers, no windows glowing with television light, only shadows. The world felt paused. A sudden tone and vibration cut through the rainfall. Then another. Then all at once. They all skidded to a halt in the middle of the street, gasping, soaked in rain. Each of their phones buzzed again and again.
Guys, wait. No, whose phone is?
Jake. It's mine.
One by one, they poured out their phones. The blue-white glow lit up their pale, rain-slicked faces. And there it was. A message sent to each of them individually that read, "Smile. words were simple, cheerful even, but wrong. Too wrong. They felt violating and possessive.
No, this can't be real, right? Guys?
Logan, what in the actual fuck?
I didn't do this. I don't even know how this is happening.
It's all of us, guys. I got it too.
Emma raises her phone and shows it to the group.
Yep. Nope. I'm done. I am done. Alright? This is bullshit.
As they bickered amongst each other, the world had gone still, and a faint motion had caught Emma's eye. A shape, shifting just beyond the alley up ahead. Subtle, fluid, like fog remembering how to walk.
Guys, do you see that?
The group turned, facing it as the fog began to take shape. A face, suspended in the dark, pale, and hovering just above the ground, like it had never needed legs to begin with. It smiled with quiet certainty, its eyes wide and reflective, its grin stretched as though it might tear through the fog itself. The kids didn't move. They couldn't. The longer they stared, frozen in fear, the wider the grin became, like it fed on being seen. And then suddenly, it spoke.
Imagine if you hadn't played. Too late to frown now.
The voice was soft, but landed like thunder. It came from nowhere and everywhere all at once, folding the air in on itself. And as the voice faded, the grin grew. The face pulsed slightly, expanding, watching. The final word dragged out like a thread, unraveling, soft, sticky, and impossible to stop once pulled. And it pulled them under, deeply, as if in a trance. They didn't move. They couldn't. Their chests rose and fell in shallow sink, eyes wide and lips trembling in the cold rain. Not paralyzed by magic, but by something worse. Fear that whispered comfort. Fear that cradled them, just long enough to convince them not to run. Like prey too stunned to flee, even as their minds screamed for them to run. Their bodies didn't listen, until Ellie's knees buckled. She fell. The shock shattered whatever hold had taken root in her spine. Her mouth opened, but only a whimper came. Her panic snapped the others out of the trance as she shook, smacked, and shoved their frozen bodies back into motion. The others gasped, jolted awake by the sound of survival. She urged them to run, and they did. They bolted with no hesitation, slipping and crashing into each other again. The night collapsed around them as they fled, blind, breathless, panicked panic driving their legs faster than their minds could follow. No one dared look back, but they all felt it. That pressure, that gaze, like a camera with no lens, a promise with no end. And just before the rain swallowed everything, just before the last footstep vanished into the storm, they heard it again. A soft, satisfied chuckle. Jake was the first to go. It was 3 days after the warehouse. His parents found him in his room, seated in front of his computer. The screen was still on, displaying a paused video game menu. The faint hum of the monitor filling the room. At first, they thought he had fallen asleep, his head tilted slightly to the side. Then they saw his face. His mouth stretched into a wide, unnatural smile. The corners of his lips cracked and bleeding. His eyes were open, impossibly wide, and staring into the screen with a look of pure, unrelenting terror. His hands still hovering over the keyboard and mouse, frozen mid-movement. And then they heard it. Over the headset, a faint voice looped over and over again, distorted, familiar.
Smile. Thank you for playing. Smile. Thank you for playing.
It was Jake's voice. A bit distorted, but Jake's nonetheless. And when they checked the game's server log, no one else had been online. The police called it a sudden cardiac arrest, but no one could explain the smile. Ellie lasted a day longer. Her body was found in her bed, as though she had slipped away peacefully. However, her mouth was twisted into a grotesque grin, the skin at the corners drawn so tight, as if her face is being forced to hold the expression. Her eyes were wide open, fixed on the ceiling, glass-like and unblinking. Her hands were locked around her phone. The screen glowed bright as it received a message at exactly 3:03 a.m. The text had read only one message: smile. And next to it, a smiling emoji. There was something off about it all. Something deliberate. As if whoever had done this hadn't just wanted her dead. They wanted her afraid, drawn out, mocked, as if they enjoyed watching her break, amused and taking some perverse delight in the moment her fear turned inside out and revealed itself. Mia's death was more public. She arrived at a house party with a group of friends, determined to drown her fear in noise, music, and distraction. She laughed, she danced, she cracked jokes like everything was fine. No one noticed the way her eyes kept darting to dark corners, or how she jumped every time her phone buzzed. Around midnight, she disappeared from the living room. Her friends assumed, well, she went home early, but she didn't. Later, an elderly couple on a midnight walk told police they saw her step into the alley behind the house, alone. No coat, no shoes. They said she moved slowly. Her eyes appeared glassy, unfocused, like she was listening to something only she could hear. But they just assumed that she was either drunk or on drugs. She was laughing, the woman said, but not in a way that made you want to join in. It was unsettling. They happened to find her a few hours later, back against the brick wall, head tilted towards the stars, mouth frozen in that familiar, grotesque grin, eyes wide open, reflecting the streetlight above like still water. The police found no drugs, no injuries, and just like the others, a message was left behind in a note, crumbled in her hand. It read, "Smile. Thank you for playing." Emma had been the quietest since the warehouse. She had stayed at home, locking every door and window, keeping every light on, no matter the time of day. But the lights didn't stop it. She was found sitting in her bathtub, fully clothed, the shower running cold water over her lifeless body. The water had spilled into the floor, soaking the rug and creeping under the bathroom door. Her face was the same as the others. Wide eyes, frozen in terror, and a smile that seemed to defy the limits of human anatomy. The mirror in the bathroom was shattered, written in her own blood. On the remaining shards was the same note left behind with the others. They found Logan the next morning, still alive, barely. He was seated in the same spot the night of the game, hunched within the remnants of the broken ritual. His hands still gripped the notebook, fingers trembling, nails split down to the quick, ink smudged with blood. His entire body quaked in short, uneven bursts, like something inside him wanted out, but couldn't find a way. His face was split so wide, it had torn the corners of his mouth open. The skin around his cheeks had given way to the pressure of the impossible grin. Blood had dried in the creases, but still, his lips remained curled, forced, locked. His eyes, so wide, they didn't blink. They couldn't. The whites stretched and cut at the edges like his skull had cracked just to accommodate the expression. He wasn't dead, but he couldn't move, couldn't speak. Only twitch, just enough to know he was still in there, still awake, still in pain. Some would say he was lucky. Others called it mercy. But anyone who saw Logan swore it looked more like punishment and torture. On the floor beside him, scrawled in jagged letters across the concrete, was one final message that read, "Keep smiling." It didn't end with them. Not really. The footage from that night, it was never meant to surface, but it did. uploaded and rewatched over and over again. During the ritual, one of them, Ellie, had been recording. Just the shaky phone angle tucked low in her lap. She captured it all. The incantation, the mirror, everything. Right up until she dropped it. 2 days passed. Nothing happened. So she uploaded it. Who knows why? Maybe for attention. Maybe to convince herself it was over. But it wasn't. People laughed, said it looked faked, called it a short film or a new trendy game ritual someone created to scare teenagers. They all smiled along with it. And whenever they did it noticed. Now, it's just out there, spreading. Not like a curse, not like a virus, but just like content. Because despite the number of deaths, no one really took it seriously. How would you react if this story found you? If you watched something recently that didn't feel quite right, just remember, it doesn't care who started the game. It only cares who's next. One thing is for sure though, if you ever hear it say smile, it's not a warning. It's a eulogy whispered way too early. Maybe one night your phone will buzz. No name, no number. Just one word and a smile emoji. You won't know what it means. But by the time you do, you've already lost.